So let's get smarter with the help of our lead-off panel. Peter Baker is here, chief White House correspondent for The New York Times. Daniela Diaz, congressional reporter for Notice. And Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, a retired commander of the U.S. Army Europe and an MS Now military analyst. General, 12th straight night, you know you are getting the first question. If the strategy is just to keep hitting Iran until they give in, that seems like a recipe for an endless war, especially with the Houthis opening up a new front. What do you think?
It does, Stephanie, but I'll put a caveat to that. As all things are, this is complicated. Most of those strikes are going into two major cities, Bandar Abbas and Isfahan. And having been one of the people who's done wargaming against Iran decades ago, those are the two things you want to encircle. And I don't mean to get geeky on you here, but Bandar Abbas, the city next to the Straits, is surrounded by mountains. And it is not only a major port city, but a major military city. So I think the operational plan is to contain that city so there's no movement in and out of Bandar Abbas. You see it there. What you don't see is the Zagros and the Jinao mountains that surround that city. If you knock out a couple of bridges and a couple of roads, you have the potential for trapping the military in that city. Now, okay, that's good, but the other bad thing, and this is the complicated part of it, is those are all mostly dual-use facilities. And without seeing the targeting list that the Air Force and the Navy are using, you can't really tell what are dual-use facilities versus military infrastructure. So, I'm truthfully very skeptical that they're avoiding all dual-use facilities. And I'll give you an example. If you hit a water system or a water tank, if it provides water to 10,000 civilians and 100 military personnel, that's not a dual-use facility. So again, you have to dive a whole lot deeper into what the targeting list looks like. But it seems to me that they are putting that city and the other city of Isfahan, which is farther to the north, under an extreme amount of pressure. And it's not helping the civilians of Iran like President Trump said he was going to do months ago.
Peter, we're obviously more oil independent than we ever have been. However, yesterday the president said that the United States has no need for the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, gas is up to $4.09 a gallon. Oil prices have shot up 4% just this morning. Is anybody buying what Trump's saying on this one?
I mean, not if you're at the gas pump. No, you're not paying attention to that. I mean, look. Yeah, exactly. And I think, look, I understand what he's saying. Obviously, Strait of Hormuz, the oil that comes out of there is generally not oil that we use, but it's a fungible market. You know this better than anybody. You can't sit there and say that we have our own oil and therefore it won't have any impact. The impact on the market in one part of the world affects the entire world. And we've seen that at home. And when you're trying to fill your gas tank, when you're a farmer trying to row crops, you're seeing the impact of that. And you're not going to pay much attention to the geopolitical niceties about it. You want to be able to afford to run your business and run your household. And I think that, we're getting closer and closer to the fall, and this is going to be a topic of conversation for, lawmakers running for re-election. And I think that, there's the strategy of putting more pressure, as the general's talking about, is understandable, but I'm not sure whether it's going to lead to a different outcome. The 40 days of pretty heavy bombardment at the beginning of this war obviously didn't force the Iranians to buckle in terms of making the kind of agreement that Trump wants and would accept. So what is going to change their mind at this point? That's not really clear.
All right, well, then let's talk about a different strategy. Congress's on the $73 billion war funding. The Republicans in the House seemed to say, yes, Donald Trump, sure, have whatever you want. Is that, Daniela, simply because they're passing the buck and they now know that the Senate has to do the hard part and say, I'm not sure about this?
The short answer here, Stephanie, is yes. Look, when Speaker Mike Johnson was really pushing to try to have this budget bill that would provide funding for the Iran war pass Congress, past his conservatives, there was a lot of disagreement from members of his party that were angry saying that this is not being offset, that they are against spending costs. And there were some questions yesterday when I was on the Hill as this vote is happening, whether they could, Speaker Mike Johnson could pull it through. But the real question here is what's going to happen in the Senate. It is not clear whether they're even going to take this up, Stephanie, before next week when they're going to be gone. After next week for their August recess, which is when all the lawmakers go back to their home states and spend time in their districts. A lot of these House members, for spending time for reelection as Senate members that need to go back because they're facing tough reelections. But it's going to be a tough sell for them, too, to go back to their home district, Stephanie, and try to convince their constituents that spending this money is worthwhile when a lot of Americans are seeing gas prices go up, their inflation go up, and they don't understand why we're in this war and what it'll benefit them long term when they're feeling the effects of this right now.
And General, can we just go back to the first point you made? And I want to tie it to this report that 21 American strikes have hit civilian infrastructure. You just laid out the military behind these strikes and where they're specifically trying to hit these two cities. How can an American official deny that this was intentional when the president keeps openly threatening to hit bridges and power plants?
Yeah, they can't, Stephanie, and that's the tough part. And I'll reinforce what Peter said. This is, it is an operational approach. Do I think it's a good one? No, I don't. It's coercive in nature. And what we've seen is Iran being hardened by all this. But what's also challenging now, when you're talking about the constant reporting of potentially hitting civilian targets, again, we don't know for sure, but I'm skeptical that we're not hitting civilian targets. We become much like Russia became during the Ukrainian war. We become pariahs on the world stage. If we continue to hit civilian targets, and if the president continues to post on Truth Social that he's going to do that, it's certainly a war crime unless you get into the fine details of what we're talking about. When the president says, hey, for every strike we have against a ship, we're going to strike a bridge or some kind of facility, that's an indicator of purposely targeting civilian infrastructure, and that is a war crime.
Peter, at the top of the show, we aired the clip of Marco Rubio basically saying as soon as they ink any sort of agreement, as soon as they come to terms with Iran, Iran then tears it up and changes the terms. In the last hour, our president suddenly declared that the new civil nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia, well, now that is subject to the country joining the Abraham Accords. Is he now trying to tack on a new, really big condition after the fact?
It certainly seems like that. That's not a condition that was announced when they first signed this deal yesterday, and it's not something that we've heard from the Saudis on. Nobody from the Saudi government has said that they're in any way willing to extend diplomatic recognition to Israel. Now, this has been the thought in this kind of a deal for a long time. The Biden administration pursued a normalization deal with the Saudis that would include this kind of a civil nuclear cooperation agreement as an inducement toward that. But of course, that was all blown up on October 7th with the Hamas attack. Today, the president seemed to be giving the Saudis what they were asking for without requiring the trade-off that the Biden people had sought. A day later, after a lot of criticism, suddenly he's saying, oh, wait, no, actually, we do require the Saudis to recognize Israel. And the Saudis have made clear up until now, anyway, that wasn't on the table unless there was a pathway to a resolution of the Palestinian issue, of which obviously there's not. So we don't know that the Saudis have made any step toward that. Maybe they'll make some announcement saying something that we don't expect. But absent that, if that's the condition the president's going to put on it, which again is what the condition was always going to be, then this is sort of a meaningless agreement at this point because, that's not where the Saudis seem to be.
General, I want to get your reaction to just one more thing before I let you go. Yesterday, as the president was headed to the dignified transfer, he essentially put words in the mouths of the 4 fallen American soldiers, claiming that they said, quote, "We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon," end quote. What do you think about that?
It's abhorrent, Stephanie. I heard the words, too, and that's not something soldiers say, first of all. I think I have a pretty good feel for that. Soldiers go where they're told to go, and they fight and do what they're asked to do. They're not going to get into the political ramifications of what the strategic objectives are. You had, a first lieutenant, a sergeant, a specialist, and a private. I would really hesitate to say that they were thinking anything about the nuclear deal and what we have to do for denuclearization of Iran. So the president using soldiers in a political aspect like that, it's not the first time he's done it, that's for sure. But it's also at this particular location, the optics and the location and the place and the event is just, it's, to me, it's just abhorrent that he used that in that way.
When I heard it, I thought about one of those four soldiers, Isabella Gonzalez, just 19 years old from Texas. I can't imagine those were her words. General, thank you so much for joining us, Peter and Daniela, not letting you leave just yet.